In this episode of Weekly Poker Hand, let's take a look at a hand that Rampage Poker played in the $25,000 buy-in Wynn High Roller.
I have ace queen offsuit in the big blind on 1.4 million chips.
They're playing 15K, 25K, so a very big stack.
Cutoff player, chip leader at the table who covers me, opens up the action to 50,000. He's been very active utilizing his chip stack, and when the small blind makes the call here in the big blind, I think because the small blind called, I would much rather isolate from out of position. There's a lot of merit to taking down the chips in the middle here by taking it down pre-flop, or we play a big pot with a very good hand. So I raise this up and 3-bet to 230,000.
I like this size in general. I'd probably go a little bit bigger, like 250, maybe 275. Facing an initial raise, when you are out of position playing somewhat deep stacked, you're going to want to make it about 4 times the initial raise. So here, if the opponent made it 50, you'll want to make it something like 200, 4 times 50, right? And then you're going to want to add in however much the callers put in the middle, which would be 50K in this instance. So you want to make it something like 250K in this spot when you are out of position and you want to 3-bet, when there's a raise and a caller in front of you. Again, 230, 250, not that big of a deal. What a lot of people do very wrong, though, is they make it something like 125, 2.5x. Then they get called every time and they're out of position with a non-super nut hand, and that's not where you want to be at all. Pre-flop fold equity is valuable.
A little bit on the bigger side here, but we're multi-way and out of position. Anyways, things get dicey because the cutoff makes the call, and this is going to be a big one. We're off to a flop of King 10-6, 2 hearts here. Going heads up on this flop, and this is a very, very good board for me. My hand blocks strong hands like ace-king and king-queen, so I'm certainly going to bet this one along with a gut shot to the nuts. I bet 160,000.
So it's important to recognize in this scenario that most of Rampage's 3-betting range should be good, strong, linear hands, which are just going to mostly be the best high cards, ace-king, ace-queen, maybe king-queen, then good pairs, like, I don't know, 9s are better, 10s are better, something like that. And then good, strong, suited Broadway hands, which connect very well with this board, plus maybe some suited aces, which some portion of the time will have a flush draw. And when they don't, they at least have one overcard. So this is an excellent, excellent board for Rampage's range. And if you consider the opponent's range, they're going to have a lot of marginal-ish stuff in this scenario, like non-super premium high cards, because they would often 4-bet ace-king, maybe ace-queen suited, aces, kings, queens, right? And they're going to have some suited connected type stuff that will often line up with the 10. So this is a spot where Rampage's good hands are just generally going to absolutely crush the opponent's good hands. And that allows Rampage to bet this scenario pretty frequently. So he does go for a small bet, just pushing his range advantage.
What would make my life really easy is to simply get a fold right here, right now. Steal this one with ace high, take it down, but nope. My opponent calls.
It is worth noting when you bet small on the flop, you are going to get called a lot, so you better have a plan.
Oh God. The pot is building, and I have ace high and basically nothing. We're off to a turn, which is the 6 of spades. Brings in a backdoor flush draw. It does pair the board, and I think in theory, another very good card for me. The cool thing about my hand is that it unblocks all of the flush draws. And also with the board pairing, it removes pocket 6s from his range and all of my overpairs, aces, this would really be it. Would love this card. So I decided to bet again, 375,000.
375,000 is about 40-ish% pot. So in this scenario, you want to ask, which hands do I want to value bet to begin with, right? So in this spot, what do we want to value bet? Aces, obviously. Kings and 10s, probably. Maybe we slow play pocket kings. Then what? King, queen. We want to value bet king, queen. Probably. What about like king, jack suited? Maybe. King, 10 suited, definitely. There's only 2 combinations of that, though. That's not all that many value hands, though, if you think about it. So because we don't have that many value hands, we don't get to have that many bluffs. What are some logical bluffs to bet? Well, queen, jack is a very logical one, but I don't think we're going to be 3-betting pre-flop with queen, jack offsuit. So we only have queen, jack suiteds. And 2 of those are very high equity with flush draws. So those are really good hands to bet. Do we ever 3-bet pre-flop with queen 9 suited or jack 9 suited? If so, those are going to be also very good hands to bluff because they completely lack showdown value, but they have a little bit of equity. What about other flush draws? Those are probably okay to bet, especially if you don't expect to get shoved on very often. So if you did have ace-x of spades or hearts, those are pretty good to bluff. So we have a lot of logical bluffing hands. So the question then becomes, do we need to add in additional bluffing hands? Maybe we do, maybe we don't. The only logical ones are ones that have okay equity, and that's going to be ace, queen, and ace, jack. So I think this is probably okay to bluff. And the neat thing about this is that if you do bet the turn with your flush draws, and then the flush draw misses, very often those are not good hands to bluff on the river, because when you have a flush draw, it makes it more difficult for your opponent to have a flush draw, which means they're more likely to have a made hand, like a king, that's just not going to fold. So when you bluff the flush draws on the turn, quite often you're not going to bluff them on the river. But when you bluff the offsuit hands, like this one, ace of diamonds, queen of clubs, and the flush draw misses, this becomes a very good hand to bluff on the river, because now it's more likely your opponent has a flush draw because you don't have any of those cards that block the flush draw. So do we need to bluff this one? I'm not sure. But if we do bluff this one, you need to go ahead and recognize you're going to be following through on a lot of rivers, which feels nasty. But luckily, Rampage is a punter. It'll come natural to him.
I am blasting into the middle here with nothing. And can my opponent fold? No, he does not. He reaches for chips again and makes the call. Man, how can I win this pot? This pot is getting very, very big. And Jack, one time please deal it. The river is the 8 of spades. That is not a Jack. I've now arrived in the spot with ace high. The pot is massive, and I think spades are irrelevant here at the very least. Backdoor flush draws aren't super relevant. And I'm just thinking to myself, do I want to shut down? And if I'm thinking things over, you guys who watched my videos for a while know I do not. Sometimes you have to do some crazy shit to win tournaments, guys. And sometimes you gotta try to get people to fold king, queen, king, jack in this spot. And let's make those specific hands very indifferent because I am all in. It's a total of 680,000. My opponent covers me, and this bluff is freaking massive. I am basically killing myself here if I get called because I have a massive chip stack. Even 680,000 right now is a plentiful amount to play with at this point in the tournament. We're running relatively deep as we're at the final 3 tables. And look, do I need to do it? Who knows? But I'm risking my entire tournament life in the biggest buy-in of my life, and my opponent thinks about it for like 4 to 5 minutes, guys.
4 to 5 minutes in the tank. You think you could sit there and be nice and stoic and seemingly have a good hand in the spot? A lot of people can't. They crack under pressure. Don't be afraid to call the clock on your opponents, even in big pots, if they take forever. So should Rampage bluff this river? Absolutely. I think it's an annoying spot where you're going to have a lot of very good hands, like pocket kings, pocket tens, some flushes, aces, right? Ace king can value bet in the spot. So given you do have a decent amount of those hands, I think you're going to be wanting to bluff in this scenario, especially with all the hands that don't have hearts. So yeah, go for it. It feels like a punt when you bet and they just call it off with the king-9 offsuit, but this is a spot where I think going for it is absolutely mandatory. Good job by Rampage. Win or lose.
Like, we're fast forwarding really, really fast here. I am trying to stay as still as possible. My heart pounding out of my chest because if I get called, then it's game over. And guess what? My opponent folds. Oh my God. Let's freaking go. Such a massive sweat, massive bluff that sometimes you just got to do and pull the trigger. And this one worked out. And here we are, over 2 million in chips, riding the high with 19 players left.
Riding the high. Good job, Rampage. What I want to know is that if you could have a piece of someone's poker action, because Rampage did sell some action in this, whose action would you want to have in a $25,000 buy-in tournament? Take a second, think about it, and let me know who you want to have a piece of in the comment section down below. I personally, when I back players, want to have a piece of players whose action is being sold at a reasonable markup. Because at the end of the day, every player will have some logical return on investment. So, say you expect a really good player to have 50% return on investment in a tournament. But if they're selling at 1.5, well, you're going to break even, assuming your assessment about their return on investment is correct. If you're buying at 1.5, it means you're paying a 50% markup, but that is their edge. So, whenever you are buying action, it is vitally important that you do not pay too much markup, which is why I sell a little bit of my action to all of you on pokerstake.com at no markup. Presumably I have an edge in most tournaments I play, probably all of them, and you can get a piece of my action for no markup at all on pokerstake.com, and they do not take a rake either. So the platform doesn't take a rake. I don't vig you. I'm trying to give everyone a good sweat. So that's what you want to look for. You want, ideally, good players at low markup. Make sure the event is generally not super duper 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 tough, unless the player is very, very good. And yeah, figure out their edge, subtract the markup, and that's your potential profit. If you think someone's going to make 30% return on investment and they're selling at 1.2, it means you will make 10% minus the rake that you are paying out the door, which, you know, may end up being more than that 10% difference. If you're buying action and you do not have any sort of an edge, realize you're just gambling, but there certainly are some players out there who will sell action at no markup for the fans. I know, I mean, I do it all the time. Dale Negreanu does it. Lots of great players do it, so make sure you look for that, and those are usually pretty good spots to get your gamble on. Talk to you next time.